1977 about this. We will begin from Ois Lamed Beis. That's a little bit over one paragraph on the bottom of the page. The Kan Hamokim Lahavir Inyan Noisef. At this occasion, by this Shiur Alef Nisan Farbrengen of Tafshin Lamed Zayin, it's the appropriate place to clarify an additional topic to what the Rebbe was talking about earlier. By prefacing what we spoke about many times, Oidis Lashon HaKosov, about the expression in the Pasuk V'negel Taryag mitzvahs, concerning the 613 mitzvahs, Loi soisifu gaimer v'loi sigru. Do not add to the mitzvahs and do not decrease from the mitzvahs. The famous question that's asked about this prohibition, seemingly it should have said the opposite. First, it should have said loy sigru, because that's seemingly worse. Do not detract, do not minimize, do not make less the mitzvahs. And only afterwards he should have added, you should not add to the mitzvahs. First he has to negate something that's much more severe, something that's much more, if you will, spiritually dangerous, that's not removing any of the mitzvahs. That's self-understood, how bad that is. Afterwards, the pasuk said a greater idea. Feel the light sifu. Do not even add to the mitzvahs. This itself demands explanation. Why? What does it bother you if we add another mitzvah? There is the idea of that we do add by making a fence around the Torah. So what's so terrible about adding to the mitzvahs? But we clarify that why are you allowed to make a fence around the Torah? It's not a command, because you cannot create new mitzvahs. Mitzvahs, there's only 613. It's an idea of a fence, gzeira, decree, takana, some type of establishment, v'chulum. The very fact that you're saying you can add, provided that you do not identify it as a mitzvah, that means that adding itself is not such a terrible thing, it's a good thing. The problem is, if you add, don't call it a mitzvah. What does it bother us if you'll add already and you'll call it a mitzvah? To such a degree, that's the first thing that the pasuk says. First the pasuk says loy tesifu, do not add, and then it says loy sigru. So the Rebbe explains one of the explanations, and this is when people start acting as if they own the Torah and they can control the Torah, even if he claims that his intention is for the best of intentions, his wish is to add to the Torah, the very thought that the person can add to the Torah, this proves he considers Torah a human creation. Since he considers Torah a human creation, so he feels, I can add to Torah. It belongs to the people. Since I have expressed my balabatishkeit over the Torah, my ownership over the Torah, so therefore, this could lead that it can come to a state that you have to tell them, you think you own it? don't take away from the mitzvahs. But where does that mistake come from? That mistake comes from loisesifu. Kiloimer, this means to say, ein mokim lahaskal miyad meloisigru. There is no room, there's no place logically to begin. The first prohibition will be, do not detract from the mitzvah of Torah. Since this is something that would never arise in a Jew's mind. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nasan mitzvah, Hashem gave him a mitzvah. Ba'amroi, while telling him, Shaidezen nachas ruach lefonai, shamarti v'naser etzaini, that through a mitzvah, it's a pleasantness before me, that I said my will was fulfilled. If not for the fact that the person's Yetzer Hara took control of him and like forced him practically to do the Aveda, it's not even possible that a person would transgress. But even the idea that the Yetzer Hara coerced him also has to be, the coercion is not just illogical. There has to be some type of rationale that the Yetzer Hara is using to convince the person. The Yetzer Hara is dealing with a nation who is wise and understanding. Therefore, the Yetzer Hara has to be clever as well, and the Yetzer Hara has to use clever arguments. As in Yiddish, there's an expression by Chassidim that the Yetzer Hara is called the klugenker, the clever one. The order is that first the Yetzer Hara begins with adding. The Yetzer Hara wants the person to add to Torah. And afterwards he explains to the Yid, Hin charaya, here you could see that you mixed yourself into the Torah, and you were successful. You added another mitzvah. So now, once you were successful in adding to the Torah, and you were successful in showing that Torah is in your possession and your control, now you will also express your ownership by giving an opinion in the topic about not to add, not to detract, meaning he will detract. And what's that Rebbe talking about? So he says in Lamed Gimel, B'chein, Kol Zo B'tur Hakdama L'ikara Inyan, all this is a preface for the main idea that we're about to talk about. Mitzad Kama Sibos, for various reasons, Yeshna Mekaymis, there are places, Shebehem Yeshna Inyan Shal Teisifu B'negea L'Leil Seder, that they have an idea of adding concerning the Seder night. Shemitzad Regish HaMeriris, B'glal HaGzeiris V'Ashvadas V'chulu She'iru L'Negdei Neinu, because of the feeling of bitterness, because of the terrible decrees and disruptions that occurred before our eyes, shouldn't ever be such a thing to think about. And especially that in many places, the Rebbe is talking about the Holocaust, that the anti-Semites specifically chose to do many of their decrees is specifically on Yom Tov or on Chol Hamoed, Kol Gambi Mea Pesach. They chose also Pesach time to fulfill their terrible things. So therefore, people came up with an idea. And the Rebbe says, most probably the people came up with this idea, their intention was positive. That on the night of the Seder, during the Seder, they should make some type of commemoration at the Seder, I'm not sure exactly what it was, for all those that lost their lives in the Holocaust, until they actually printed in certain Haggadahs, that in this section of the Haggadah, Yaskiru, they should mention, and they should say such and such. Comes the Rebbe and says, well, seemingly, when it comes to remembering the holy and pure, the Eibusher should avenge their blood. Especially since this is a great opportunity, since the entire family gathers together for the Seder. They're in a calm state. Then we could concentrate, we could pay attention. Why does it bother to add this to the Seder? So the Rebbe says, the explanation this is, the language of the Haggadah and all the details of the Haggadah, it's something that was established and set by the greatest of the generations throughout the generations. And then once it was established, it became sanctified by the fact that millions of Jews acted in accordance with these enactments that were done. In other words, the Rebbe is going to bring what the Rambam says, that in addition to when the Chachamim established something, the real test of an establishment of a takana or a gzeira is, did the Jewish people follow it? If Jewish people followed it, that brings a whole new level of sanctity to that enactment. And there were actually rare occasions where the Chachamim established something and it never really took, and then it was removed from the custom. There was something called shemen akum. We know there's bishul akum, pas akum. It was an idea of oil of goyim, an interesting concept, but it never took, and it didn't. We didn't follow it. So the Rebbe says, in addition to the fact that the Haggadah was established by great sages throughout all the generations, on top of that, what was established was sanctified by the actual practice of Yidden, millions of Jews. To the degree that it was practiced this way over many generations, to such a degree, according to the words of the Rambam in his laws of those that rebel against the sages, once the Jewish people have accepted enactments from the sages, so then to go against that enactment, to change that enactment, that one is not fulfilling a positive commandment, and they are violating a negative commandment that Hashem wanted the Yidden to listen to the Chachamim. Since the matter was accepted in all communities, wherever Yidden are scattered, therefore it's applied to this, the command that you should not add, and therefore that's the first problem with adding into the nusach of the Haggadah a commemoration to the Holocaust. In addition to this, there is something that is it's an opposite, it's self-contradictory to actually include this in the Seder. When it comes to Yom Tovim, there's a command, it's a mitzvah. They must be Yom Tovim for rejoicing. It's prohibited to mix into them a matter that's the opposite of joy. Because Yom Tov, it's prohibited to fast. In a similar regard, all matters that the opposite of joy one may not do on Yom Tov. Even if Chas v'Shalom a person is an aval, a parent passed away, Chas v'Shalom in the middle of Yom Tov, in vast majority of mourning issues do not begin until after Yom Tov. V'lechein lekvoya b'Yom Tov alachas kam v'kam b'leil haseder v'alachas kam v'agoda inyan shu heipcha simcha l'gabri, to establish on Yom Tov, any day Yom Tov, how much more so the night of the Seder, and how much more so to insert it in the Haggadah, a matter that's totally the opposite of joy. We want that the people that are coming up with this is that you should remember what's taking place. If you're remembering it, this is not going to bring you joy. It's going to bring you the opposite of joy. This is the opposite of an obvious halacha and a clear and explained halacha. Din derabanan, and not just a din of midrabanan, al din min haTorah. There's a din min haTorah that you have to be rejoicing on Yom Tov. And here they want to establish something that's going to bring the opposite of it. True, you're going to ask me, but if you look in the Haggadah, you're going to see certain things that are not that joyous. Yes, third paragraph. Yes, in Yonim Shagdol Yisrael ichnisu b'seder Haggadah b'turzeichel le'in shein shel simcha. There are matters that the great ones of Yidden, the sages of Yidden, inserted in the Haggadah as a remembrance to events that are not joyous things, to say the least. Like we find in the explanations to the 6 different things that we put on the Seder plate. According to one explanation is it's connected, the egg, for example, is connected with the Korban Chagiga, which is the idea of Simcha. According to a different explanation, it says that the egg is also something that an ovel eats, a mourner loyalenu eats, for various reasons. So therefore the egg on the Seder plate is to remember the state of mourning and sadness that we lived through in Mitzrayim. So true, they put it in, but that's like the exception, and they knew what they were doing. What the great ones of Yidden did not insert into the Haggadah. And I'm sorry, I lost my place over here. So then there's a prohibition to insert it on Yom Tov by the Seder and the Haggadah, because the opposite of being joyous, besimcha. The truth is, doing opposites of simcha that's also something that we have to be very careful with, and there is a complaint against this to the entire month of Nisan. The Rebbe says the sages are not happy about the fact that they established a remembrance day, meaning the Holocaust Remembrance Day. They established it in a certain day in the month of Nisan. The Rebbe spoke about this on different occasions, that it's not the 27th of Nisan. The Israeli government decided to make it a Holocaust Day, because even the whole Nisan is supposed to be a day of Simcha. We don't say Avarachmim, which is in remembrance of those that were killed in the times of the Crusades. We don't say Tzidkascha, which has to do a remembrance of David HaMelech and Moshe Rabbeinu passing away. For those that make a Kel Mali Rachmim on a yard site, Shabbos for the yard site, we also don't do that in the month of Nisan. All the Tachanun that we emit in the month of Nisan. So therefore, B'chlal in the month of Nisan to establish a Holocaust Remembrance Day, the Rebbe says, is inappropriate. And it's not only that, it's not like you didn't have a different opportunity to do it in. They could have pushed it off for the month of Iyar. Not to mix in the sadness of the Holocaust with the joy that's supposed to be in the month of Nisan. The Rebbe says that topic, that's not what we're discussing here now. Here's not the place to discuss that topic. Now we're talking about something that's not going to matter in from Yud Alef Nisan till Chav Zayin. Nisan is a few weeks. We're talking about something that's going to matter in a few days. Concerning the night of the Seder, concerning the 8 days of Pesach in Golus, in the diaspora, and the 7 days of Pesach in Eretz Yisrael. It's prohibited to mix into them a matter that's not of joy. In addition to what we explained concerning the side of good, there's an additional concept, even according to their view of those that say that you should insert it in the Seder, etc. Kol inyan hashoyim sheishis million hakdoshim Hashem yimkum damam, the entire idea of the Holocaust with the 6 million holy ones, may Hashem avenge their blood. Asur lasis meza inyan sheba v'tur davar sheni or davar shlishi. It's inappropriate to make it something secondary or tertiary, meaning third place to something else. After doing many different things and saying many different things, in other words, he's doing whatever the Kiddush, and he's saying the Haggadah, etc. So then they're inserting a few lines about the Holocaust. This itself is a terrible thing. Either way, if you want to remember the Holocaust, this needs to shake a person up. You cannot fulfill your obligation through a few lines. You're singing a Pesach song before it, and a Haggadah song afterwards, and then afterwards to sing Chad Gadya. You're just sticking it in over there between all the other stuff. You're squeezing in the Holocaust. In such a way, it's impossible to reach, and the purpose and the goal that one wants to acquire, to make sure that no one forgets about it. This is just the opposite. You're just sticking in a few lines. We're speaking about a matter that has to have its own devoted thing. It's not called, there's kaveh bracha la'atzmi is an expression. The Rebbe said it's not a bracha, but it should be the greatest and the deepest and the broadest thing. Kol ha'toyrim she'em razem watim, and all the descriptions that you'll say about the Holocaust, they're still too little. Kach shalitchayf zois be'inyan she'eina shaychel of klal, to push in the Holocaust into something that has nothing to do with the Holocaust, and to fulfill one's obligation in this quantity of how many lines they're saying it, and this quality of it being swallowed up in other things, there is no like big sage that would signed off on this particular language, even if they want to say it during the 3 weeks. So in other words, the language has also not been like established or something. Even according to their view, this doesn't make any sense. You're minimizing the Holocaust instead of giving it the appropriate attention. Then the Rebbe is going to bring a similar thing that people want to place into the Seder experience, that they're going about it the wrong way. Lamed Vav, third paragraph on the page. In a similar vein, those that want to remember the Jews that are found behind the Iron Curtain, and they're not able to have a Seder. So what do they want to do? How do they want to remember the Jews behind the Iron Curtain? Either they'll place a matzah in commemoration of the Jews behind the Iron Curtain, or they're going to put an empty chair at the Seder table in honor and commemoration of the Jews behind the Iron Curtain. It's a great doubt if it's permitted to do this. If the intention is to remember those Jews, this is not the appropriate time for this. Again, not the Seder. And this is also not the appropriate way to remember them. Medubar oides shlolish million Yehudim shnimtzayim sham. We're talking about 3 million Jews that are there. Shekol echad mehem lefi matzavim amadim moiser nafshal and yonei yadus. That each one of them, according to their state and situation, is literally sacrificing their lives for matters of Judaism. Yesh ke'elu shebekach shebeshem Yisrael yichune bedor shishishmer pasper shloishu Yehudi Yevrei. There are those that just because they are called by the name Jew, that he demands that they should write in his identity card that he's a Jew, which is in Russian is Yevrei. Hareyu maimid b'sakon es kol ha'metzias shel parnasosim parnosim nebesi. That itself, no other mitzvah, just identifying as a Jew endangers the entire sustenance of himself and his family. It's an actual self-sacrifice for Yiddishkeit. Surely you can't treat these Jews in a very ancillary fashion. What am I doing for the Jews behind the Iron Curtain? I'll put an extra matzah on the table for them, or I'll leave an empty chair for them. Another thing, it won't benefit them whatsoever. The proof for this is all the things that they did, I guess they did this in the past already, did not help a single Jew behind the Iron Curtain. In addition to the fact, there are those that fool themselves. They say, I did something for Soviet Jewry. How? Don't you see? I have this empty chair by the table. Don't you see? I left a matzah for them. Not a single Jew behind the Iron Curtain had no benefit from this. Also here, leaving that empty chair by a table did not impress anyone that does have the capability to do something for Jews behind the Iron Curtain. If it's so, you should be able to say that I'm satisfied, my innards rejoice that something was done. So again, if you're just trying to satisfy your own conscience, you're trying to do that. The night of the Seder is not the appropriate time, it's not the appropriate manner. Here again, there's no place to speak about this at length. And these are topics that the Rebbe spoke on other occasions as well. The Rebbe concludes the last line of the page, should be the will of Hashem, since Hashem's salvation is like an eye blink. Therefore, the Geula of Hashem will be like an eye blink. We should only speak about things that make people happy and good things in the visible and revealed good. And we should prepare for Pesach out of freedom from all things that confuse and make people worried and disturb people, and all negative things. Should be a kosher and happy Pesach for us, all Yidden, wherever they are, until speedily the Beis Mikdash should be rebuilt. We'll eat over there from the Korban Pesach and from the Korban Shlomim Chagiga Bagol Dedan in our measure of time.